Hey, what's up, guys? I'm about to go live on YouTube right now. Hey, what's up, guys?
Be quiet, man. All right. So, I think we're live. It's 7:58. I'm early for once in my life. I don't know if we're fully there yet. Are we there? Let's see. So it looks like we are, in fact,
Be quiet,
live.
man.
All right. So we're gonna turn the mic down here. It sounds a little loud. Live. It's 7:58. I'm early. All right, peace. I don't know if anybody is here, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. Fully there yet? Thank you. Are we there? If you're watching this now or watching this later, so it looks like we are. I appreciate you being here with me. We're gonna wait until 8 on the dot. So we're gonna turn the mic. That gives me a minute to decompress. It's 7:58. Kind of early. All right, peace. Put this all together rather quickly. Everybody is here, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. There yet? I hope you guys are having a nice evening. If you're watching this now or watching this later, I don't know if I'm gonna. So it looks like we be able to appreciate you being here with me. I love that. We're gonna wait until 8 on the dot. So we're gonna turn the mic. That gives me a minute to decompress. It what? 58. Kind of early. All right, peace. Put this all together rather quickly. Turn that off. I'm hoping it's working. You're probably hearing a lot of feedback. I'm gonna be feeling my way through this. I've only done this a couple times, and I'm using a single monitor setup. Maybe next time I'll use my laptop and then double display. I got a Mac Mini recently, so I've been getting used to using a desktop versus a laptop, which isn't much different. It's just portability and such. And I gotta figure out this OBS because I gotta do all the back end stuff while I'm doing the front end. It's 8 o'clock, so peace. Thanks for being here. If you could bear with me for just a moment, I'm trying to figure out how to get the chat to work so that we can have a good time. But thank you for being here. I do appreciate it. I know it was kind of spur of the moment, but I'm trying to be more productive these days, and this is a good way to be engaged. Sharing. I believe in sharing. I believe heavily in sharing. So yeah, I'm going to be using Ableton Live. I'm using Ableton Live Lite 12. It came free with my keyboard, and I figured I wanted to see just how much I could do with the Lite version. It's free, and I love Ableton Live, so so far I've been using it for, well, I've been using Ableton Live since 2006 or so on the advice of my man Giovanni Marks, aka Subtitle, West Coast Workforce. But yeah, no, I love it. I had tried Pro Tools and Acid and Cubase and a number of other software programs, but Ableton Live, it's all inclusive. It's got all of the recording functionality, sequencing, sampling, everything integrated into a very usable interface, or an easy to learn interface. I don't know, but it's got all the bells and whistles I ever need for anything, and I know how to use them, so I do enjoy it. I use a couple VST plugins with it, not a whole bunch. Primarily, well, I use Waves plugins for my mixing and mastering, and then Native Instruments Massive is a synth I like a lot. I've tried a lot of different synths, and there are a few good ones out there. But I just like Massive. It's, in my mind, it's like having a particular keyboard that you like or something. Like, you may have a number of them, but it's not always necessary to use all these pieces of equipment. And I tend to be very minimal or minimalist in my approach, so, you know, I don't need too much going on. I'll try to do all that, like, with the rhythm. Let the rhythm hit them. So anyway, I don't know how this is gonna go. I'm just gonna go ahead and start. Let me turn the volume down on my phone. Shout out Mike York. That was Mike York. So yeah, I guess we're just gonna jump in. So I should have a new project open in Ableton Live. I was messing around with some stuff to get the levels and whatever, but I think we're in a brand new project. So I'm gonna try to do at minimum the beat right now. This is all just from scratch. I'm gonna do a whole beat, but I'm only gonna use instruments and sounds and effects that are found in Ableton Live, with the exception of the Massive plugin. Oh, and then I may use this Arturia Analog Lab 5 collection that came with the Arturia Mini Lab 3 keyboard that I recently got. I'm not going to be using that today. I'm just going to do everything using the computer keyboard and my mouse, because you would always be able to make a beat if you had a laptop and Ableton Live. Like, that's kind of the idea. And there are other synths and things that are available in Ableton Live, and I may use some of those, but for the light version, they don't have one of the main synths that I like to use in Ableton, and that's the Operator. So Massive is just kind of like a bulked up Operator. Operator's is a collection, or not a collection, it's a instrument which contains, what is it, 4 oscillators that are separated, and then you have options for filtering, LFO, and all that sort of thing, which Massive does too, but then it just has that to like the nth degree. So I'll go ahead and use Massive, but all my drums are going to come from Ableton. So let me see what's going on here with the chat. I don't know what happened. I don't know, maybe it is working and I just can't see it. So, alright. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started here. So, something I like to do, when you open up a new project, if you haven't set any like default parameters for opening up a new project, you should have 2 MIDI channels or tracks and then 2 audio tracks. So I won't get into all the specifics. This isn't an Ableton Live tutorial. It's just that I will share some of the information because it is helpful. So having 2 of each, typically I'm not going to even need the audio channels. Audio channels I will rarely use unless I'm recording vocals or a live instrument, which I'm not doing any of that right now, so that I don't have all of this space taken up too soon. I'm just going to leave it with these 2 MIDI tracks. But then what I'm also going to do is add a MIDI track. So I like to have 3 MIDI tracks set up. I do 1 for percussion, 1 for my kick drum, and 1 for my snare drum. And because I don't do live, like playing stuff out and whatever, like I have each instrument on different tracks so that I can adjust the parameters of those individually. If I put all my drums on one track, then if I'm adjusting the kick and the snare and it's all in one channel, then that's just it. I don't know. I don't like the way that works. So I like to have everything individual. Sometimes I'll even double things up if I need more fullness or whatever. But anyway, so I do need another MIDI track. The keyboard shortcut for adding a new MIDI track is Command. I'm going to say everything for a Mac. Like, I use a Mac, so if you hear Command and you use a PC, it's Control. You know that. So Command Shift T is going to give us a new MIDI track. Now, you could duplicate it. Like, if I were to hold Alt, click on it, and drag it over, I could duplicate it, but then it's going to make it the same color, and for me, that gets confusing. So it'll actually give you almost kind of like a gradient if you create another new track. So if I create another one, it may give me like a darker purple color or something like that. Well, it's a lighter pink, but they're not the same color, so you can tell them all apart. I'm going to leave that there because I'll probably put the Massive track on there. So what I also like to do, and I'll do this at various stages of the process, is rename these so that I know what they are while I'm working through here and I don't have to use my brain too much, because once you get 8-10 tracks, you're going to be trying to figure out what's what. So I'll do my percussion. Hitting tab will just automatically bring you over. Oh, Command R is how you rename. So if you've got this selected, any track selected, Command R will give you the option of editing the title or name for that track. And then tab will take you over to the other one. Now, something I just learned recently, I never paid attention, was having the number symbol here. If you leave it as that, it'll insert the number of the position it is within your tracks. So this being the second track starting from the left, if I just leave this number symbol and then I type in kick, because this is where I'm going to put my kick drum, it's going to just put 2 kick, which is pretty cool. I don't know that I would use that. I don't like having the numbers on there at all. I don't really need numbers. It actually gets kind of confusing if you've named some of them with regular names that have no numbers, and then you've got other tracks that do have numbers, and you're like, well, why is this? Plus, I don't like the number 6. So anytime track number 6 comes up, I'm like, I don't want to use track number 6, and obviously I have to use every track in there. So, well, I guess I could leave it blank, but then I've got a blank 6 sitting in there, and that's not good either. Anyway, enough with my what do they call that? Superstition. So now I'm going to rename this one. This is going to be my snare. And let's just go ahead and put the drums in there. So one of the first things I like to do is just put a drum rack on each of these tracks. And then I'm just going to put in whichever instrument I pick in each one of these drum tracks or drum racks. I like the drum rack because it gives you up to 64 banks, or even more than that, because there's 16 on each of these pads or whatever. So, or banks. So I always like to keep my stuff as C1. It's just easy for me to remember. Now, once you get into the synths and other types of sequencing and things, and you're using instruments, having your stuff as root key C1 is going to make everything start out super low, so that's probably not always best. For me, it's okay because I usually start all my stuff out super low in the inaudible registers where it doesn't belong. But as far as the drums go, it's easy for me just because I can remember C1's first place start. I usually have to pitch down my keyboards and stuff like 2 octaves, because most of them are going to start, I think, somewhere around like C3. But anyway, so yeah, now we've got our percussion, kick, and snare tracks. I'm gonna just go I like to just find some generic sound to get me started. I don't spend too much time trying to find the perfect sound. A lot of this is gonna change throughout the course of the programming, but for now, something cool about Ableton is that they provide a lot of pretty good samples and loops and other stuff. I don't tend to get into the loops and whatever. I like to kind of do things an original way. But as far as setting up templates or just like getting yourself started, they've got a lot of stuff. Or I'll just leave it in there sometimes. Like, why not? It's there. Why wouldn't I use it? I'm not so proud that everything's got to be authentic. And some of that authentic stuff sounds trash, if I'm being honest. But anyway. See, I mean, I don't need 808 right now. But something really cool about this feature also is that if you use this area here, the search bar, you can just type in what you're looking for. So in this particular instance, because I want to do things kind of outside the box for this, I'm going to go with a tambourine first. Typically, I would go with a closed hi-hat, and just what that looks like, if I were to just type in closed, there's a number of closed hi-hats. All I'm looking at here is closed hi-hats, and then I could just go through the list with the arrow keys and hear them. That actually works in real time too when you're listening to a sequence, and then if you press the right arrow, you can just hear the sound playing. So you can trigger it and see how it'll work with your project at its current state. Excuse me. So I'm gonna see if I can find a tambourine that's gonna work. I like something real simple and basic. And the reason for that is that if I'm going to be using other people's stuff or something that I didn't have to go gather myself, then I don't want it to be all teched out already. Like, if they teched it out, I'm just being lazy. And sure, there's this issue of sourcing, like how you find something and repurpose it and put your own touch on it, makes it individualistic and what have you. And I'd prefer not to rely on that. There's a number of things I could say about that. I'm not going to, because I'm trying not to be mean anymore. But, you know, to each their own. In this case, I'm just looking for something very basic. That sounds pretty basic to me. And it even says it's an acoustified Plymouth tambourine. So what I'm going to do is make sure that my percussion track is the one that's selected. I'm going to drop this into my drum rack at C1. I have to arm the MIDI. Because this was the last one that we had made, it was already automatically armed. So I had to make sure that I armed my percussion track. Now, and luckily my root key was already set for C1. Sometimes I have to pitch down my keyboard too, like my computer keyboard, to get it there. Oh, and just a note, for Ableton octaves, you can change them down by pressing Z for my Canadian friends, or my European friends, or wherever. I'd never heard that until maybe like 20 years ago. But yeah, Z will pitch it down, and then, or take the octaves down, X will make the octaves go up. And in the case of the drum rack, if I were to be in one bay, and you know, I see my stuff's here on C1, if I press X, now when I hit the key, it's triggering C2. So that means it's gone up an octave. So I'm going to press Z to make it go back down an octave. And now we're in good shape. So this is a little loud. So I just turned down the volume on that particular sound. Now, this is the interface for the drum rack once you've dropped a sample into any of the pads. Because these act as drum pads, like an MPD or an MPC, that sort of thing. And then it drops the sampler instrument. So the sampler instrument is one of the instruments in Ableton, or simpler, sorry. Sampler is a whole other beast. So simpler is their simplified sampler. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's something you can trigger. There's a number of options you can use for it. There's a slice mode, a one-shot mode. I always use the classic mode because this gives me the basic controls: attack, decay, sustain, release, loop, and so on and so forth. One shot is slightly limited in what it's able to do, so I just tend to stay with classic. So this sounds okay for now. I'm just going to change the tempo while I'm here. For this project, I think I'm going to go 82, because that was my whole entire, I think all of the searching for the Megalo Mistress tape was all 82 beats per minute. I'd gotten a Boss DR 550 drum machine, and I was so hyped when I got it, oh my god. And I was messing around with it, trying to find the perfect groove, and then I found that 82 beats per minute at that time was like exactly where I wanted to be. Like 82 beats per minute. I couldn't imagine rapping on anything other than 82 beats per minute for the longest time. So in honor of my history, I'm going to go ahead and do the 82 beats per minute. So now we're going to get a kick drum. So same thing, we're just going to search for a kick drum. In this particular instance, that was wild. All right, no, we don't want that. I'm not going to go through every kick because that might hurt people's ears. So for this, you know what? Let's do a 909. I like 909s because it's not the 808. I love the 808. 808 my favorite drum, obviously. But the 909 has this like punchy sound to it, like a rubbery sound. Like I can't rightly explain it, but I like the way it sounds. It's got a thump to it, but it's a little more bouncy. I don't know. So see, you see what I'm saying? Like it sounds like I don't know. I love the 909. Yeah, we're gonna use the 909 for this. So I'm gonna make sure my kick track is selected. I'm gonna make sure that it's armed. The MIDI channel is armed, or MIDI interface. I don't know. And then we're gonna drop our kick in there, test it out, make sure it's on the right channel. Actually, that volume's pretty good on that particular thing. So something that I'll usually do this at the, like, not post-processing, but once I've got all my drums dropped in, then I start adjusting the levels on them, because I don't passively mix. Everything is set to an exact number, and then I do a post-processing passive mix, I guess maybe you could call it. I don't know. I didn't take any formal training, so I don't probably communicate a lot of this stuff as educated as some others may, but I'll do this the best I can. So anyway, when I say the volume looks good, it's like, yes, I could turn my volume on the track up and down here. It's at set at 0. You know, you never typically want to go past 0, but I could if I wanted to, or I could turn this volume up. But there are so many dynamics to consider. You got to think about your final output. You're thinking about the mix. I haven't even really gotten started yet, so I don't have anything to compare it to. What would I use to calibrate it? So what I typically would do is I set everything for -2 decibels as far as what the output is. So right here, it starts out as a default showing you what the incoming signal velocity is. But if you drag this bar just above the mix sliders and drag up, now you have volume control, incremental volume control that you can use with numerics or numerals, whatever. So in this particular instance, I can see that it's at -3.13. I wanted it 2, so the difference is -1.13, right? So I'm just going to put in -1, or no, sorry, I want to increase. So if it's at 0 and I need to get this to 2, then I need to add 1.13. So now when I hit the kick, it should take this to 2 if my math is correct. And there we are. So I know that this is set. Oh, you know what? I'm an idiot. I don't want to do it like that. Sorry. Never want to go above 0. I'm not even taking my own advice. Change that to 0. Hit it again. Oh, you want to reset this by clicking on it, which go back to 3.13. You got to change it right here. So I want a difference of -12 and then that -0.13. So I'm going to have to say 10.87 would be the difference, right? So we're going to go -10.87, which is going to round up to -10.9. Now we should get something in the range of 2 because it wasn't an exact. We're going to have to see what the difference is. But hey, we've lucked out. So without going over 0, we've managed to tune this particular kick drum to -2. So now the reason I do -2, or I would do negative anything, -3 might be good depending on how you like to do things. If everything is coming in under 0 to start, you're going to avoid distortion mostly and just kind of muddling the mix. You don't want to have everything so loud and competing with each other. Now maybe that may be called for in your final mix, or as the mix is progressing, you're adding vocals, you may be adding scratches, you may be adding live instruments. Then, okay, you're going to potentially push things in different directions, but you should be adding compression, you should be EQing, you should be doing a number of other things. So it should never be a competition for space. I mean, unless that's the type of music you're making or the way you're designing your sounds, and in which case, hey, by all means. For this particular demonstration, we'll be using this idea that we want to keep everything low, and then we're going to bring it up so that it fits in there nicely, and then we'll make some fine-tuned adjustments, panning and spectrum and all this other stuff to give it the body and full effect. So now that we've got the kick calibrated at -2 decibels, then now we're going to go to the snare. I like the 70s snare. I like just regular ass classic dry snares. And then, you know, you can add your effects. You can add multiple other snares. You can do a lot of things with that. So I'm going to find one that I like. There's a few different ones. So I like these two. I'm going to use them both. So I'm going to make sure that this is armed. My snare track is armed. I'm going to select both of these by holding shift. It was these two, right? Alright, so I'm going to hold shift, select both. I'm just going to drop them onto C1, but it'll automatically split them up between C1 and then C1 minor, or whatever, C1 flat, C1 something or other. C flat 1, C sharp 1, C me later, and I might have a better answer for you. I move all my stuff to what would be considered the white keys. So these are the black keys, and then the others are the white keys. So if I was using a keyboard, I would want them right next to each other. And on my computer keyboard, that's how they're set up. So when I have this arm, if I press A on my keyboard, then I'm getting the first one. If I press S, then I'm getting the second one. Now, if I had it right here, I would have to hit W, which is up, and I don't want to have to do that. I want it right next to this. So I have that tap, 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 tap functionality. I don't know that I would ever use that, but it's there in the event that I do. So that being said, and hi, peace to anybody that's joined. I appreciate it. I'm kind of just rambling on and on, but I'm having a fun time. I've never really spent a lot of time explaining this to anybody, so I hope it is satisfactory, and I hope that it is also informative. So now we're going to calibrate our snares. Now this is tricky, not really, but we do have to consider there's 2 snares on the same track. I will put multiples of the same instrument on the same track because ease of use for one. I don't want to have 5,000 tracks if I just want to make a few embellishments here and there. The reason I would pick 2 snares also is because sometimes I just want different dynamics from 2 different snares. I use snares for emphasis in different ways, as a lot of people who program drums or play drums would. There are concepts like ghost notes. I think that what Marley Marl was expanding on that in one of his videos. But this is a technique I've been using for a long time. The MPC has the 16 velocity or volume velocity thing, so you can actually like kind of adjust the loudness of certain instruments within a certain range. You can also do that with the pitch on an MPC, but it was cool to hear somebody that had that much experience explain it, and then the way that they perceived it, and then to be like, okay, that's how some people would look at it, is, oh, it's this or that. Me, I was originally compelled to try it out on the MPC because I thought about it like how a delay is, and I didn't know that much about equipment at the time. I still don't know a great amount. I can certainly work my way around an MPC or an ASR or an EPS, but I wanted to figure out how to get that like gradual in or out. And I knew I could do it like on my drum machine, but then a lot of times I would have to go in and use the actual step sequencer and like adjust the numbers and say, okay, I want this to be 24 at this time, and then I want it to be 35 at this time now. Or then I guess with the MPC and stuff, it was just, okay, this key will do it this loud, this one will do it this loud. So if I do it like this, then that should work. So that's where that came from. Damn, I just went on and on about ghost notes. So the 2 snares, we're going to have to volume this out, or, calibrate the volume. So on the first one that I have on my A key, I think I'm going to swap these around actually, because I want the snare 70s vinyl to be the primary. I like the sound on it better. Actually, you know what? That sounds a little ruckus. I'm going to get rid of that guy. Oh, you know what? Let's do this one and this one. There we go. And then we're going to swap those around. Bong. All right. So now I need to turn this guy way down, because that's going to just be kind of a accompanying snare. I may use it in this, ghost note capacity, or like for rolls, flams, that kind of thing. But I'm probably going to use it under the other one. Sometimes I like to put a couple snares together. It's a common practice. Sometimes people will use the exact same one, double it up, and it just kind of beefs it up, and then you can modulate each of them differently to get, varied effects out of that. In this particular instance, I'm just going to use 2 different snares, 2 totally different snares, so that way if I want to add any accentuation in between the primary snares, like on the 2 and the 4, then I can use those in creative ways and keep the volume lower. You don't want to have everything at the same volume because it sounds like shit. Just a bunch of like, learn to balance out the sounds. It's a great practice, and it'll make your mixes sound more full and more practiced, I think. So now we've got most of what we're going to need. The snare is coming in at negative 3.26, so we need to add 1.26 to that. So 1.26 from this is going to be 10.4, right? No, I'm crazy. It's going to be 10.74. So let's go negative 10.7 because it's just going to round it down anyway. And that brought us to negative 1.96. So we're going to want to actually take that down a little bit further. Let's say 10.9. Alright, so it's being a little temperamental as to those in-between ranges, but I don't care enough to argue over 0.16 decibels. So now, this is probably a little lower. We'll passively mix that for them. Yeah, I would recommend turning down your volume if you don't like a bunch of loud, crazy noises over and over, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. And the beat's going to stop, it's going to start, you're just going to be here with me the way that I would do it. I'm just going to be talking the whole time. So bear with me. Alright, so let's go ahead and just start working out a sequence. This is usually where I'll start to at least lay down like a basic idea of where I want to go with the drums, like setting a pace, setting the rhythm. So this is the mix window. If you press tab, that'll take you into like a song mode, recording mode. I know that there's a name for this. I don't really keep up with that. Arrangement. This is the arrangement. So there's the session view, and then there's the arrangement. I would say it is like mix and record. I don't know. That's how I think about them. When I'm recording, I'm in this window. I don't record my vocals like this. I would record them in here so I can see everything tracked out. We don't have any tracks yet, so there's nothing in there. So we're going to do our first one. I'm going to show the way that I always do it. So what I would do is using the magnifying glass up here just above the timeline. Let's say like 2 bars is usually a good place for me to start. I really am just trying to hear what the volume of everything is together and just get a general sequence going, and a 2-bar loop for me is satisfactory. So to create a new loop, I just press Control Shift M, and that'll create a new MIDI sequence to that length right there. Then if you double click on it, if it's not already selected, it'll open up the actual step sequencer window. Then the arrow key is the default, but if you press B, it'll turn into your pencil tool, in which case you can start drawing stuff in. Now you can draw stuff essentially with the arrow if you double click, and then you can use the bracket to drag things to change the length. I use either one depending on what it is that I need to do, but for the most part I like the pencil, because especially for things like if I know I'm going to have something programmed on, say, a 16 count, I'm going to right click here and make sure that I'm set for 1/16 notes, and I don't want to have to double click every single one of these. That'd be madness. So with the pencil tool I can just drag it across. Now having a 1/16 tambourine is nuts. I'm not trying to do all that, so I'm going to change this to 1/8. Now this is something that we could talk about, I guess, for a second, is quantization. I am super pro quantization. Like, I'm not saying that I don't appreciate what people do with live, natural playing, swing, and that kind of thing. Unsyncopated music is not my forte. It's not something that I typically enjoy. No disrespect. That's just how I am. I like a very tight, bump, 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 bump. Like, everything is like computer music. Like, I just like this idea of machines making music. Like, that's all any of this means to me. I don't have some deep-seated yo, shit gotta be this one way type approach. Like, I can make sample beats all day. And I can do stuff that's, you know, unsyncopated and whatever. But I mean, it's called unsyncopated for a reason. Why would I want to do that unsyncopated? Unsyncopated. That's like hopping when you walk or something. Like, yeah, you could do it if you wanted. I prefer not to. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. So just to settle it here, yes, my shit is going to be quantized hard. In fact, I'm going to show some tips and tricks for how to quantize if you are playing things live, because every once in a while I'll play something out, especially if it's instrumental notation and that sort of thing. Like, I'll play it out and then I go in and I quantize it. I've been like that since I started using equipment. I want it quantized. I would be like, hey, how do you make it on beat? Isn't there a way to make it on beat? Like, make it perfectly on beat? Yeah, that's what that's called. Like, you could call it quantizing. I say making it on beat. Then that's where we want to be. We want to be in the pocket. But all jokes aside, when we're talking about live instruments and people who play instruments, that's a different arena because they're not using machines. I mean, they may be using machines, like they're using, you know, a keyboard, or you could even consider an instrument a machine, but it's an idea of this is that person's natural rhythm. Even if they were with a metronome, people have a different natural rhythm. So when we're talking about that, that's something different entirely. Like that's music. That's the way composition and things work, is based on the natural efforts of humans. I'm not making that. I'm making computer music. It's computer music. Again and again, computer music. Not that anybody was pressing me on it. Just in the future, if anybody watches this video and wants to know what I was about and be like, okay, now I get it. This fool's trying to just make computer music. That's all he wants to do. Yeah, it's like the computers are making the music itself. Like, that's how I envision it. Like, what kind of music would they make? Now, they may make, and they are making, all different types of music. Like, I'm thinking about it more like a calculator, or, you know, some really simple computer instrument, or like an Apple IIe or something like that. Like, what would it do? Like, how would it talk? Like, what kinds of things does it understand? And if it was trained in just the math and science of music, it would only know like pitch, timing, and that sort of thing. Like, I believe that it would work in a kind of binary format or formula where things would be more syncopated, but then you would hear a lot of droning noises and things that didn't necessarily sound like music because they were generated by a computer. Anyway, just to give you some background, I've never really explained that to anybody, but that's my take on it all. I'm not here to be nobody's producer, like, extraordinaire. I'm not trying to make a name for myself as being some, like, whiz with the beats. I like to make a certain type of music. It's computer music. And if you like computer music, you probably fuck with me. But shout out to everybody that's not making computer music. Good for you. So yeah, we did the control shift and we got a new MIDI track. I've got the track here set for 1/8. So now I'm just gonna draw this in. Now, these are currently set at a velocity of 120. I am gonna press B to turn this into the arrow. I'm gonna select all of my velocity sliders. We're gonna bring these down. We're gonna bring these down to at least 100, because that's reasonable. 120 is loud. Like, it's just pumping everything up. It's saying as soon as I hit a key, it's going to be like blasting it. So I turn them down to 100, which is normal. But what I like to do a lot of times, and this is sort of adding some swing in a way, and it's also kind of along the concept of the ghost notes, is if I were to select, holding down shift and selecting every other inference of that particular instrument, and then I hold command, that's going to give us access to the velocity from this view. I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to bring this probably down to, let's say, 50. Now what that's going to do is give me half the velocity of the other one. So I did it on the 2, so it's offset. So it's actually going to sound more like an echoed quarter note than it's going to sound like a steady eighth note. So we'll go ahead and play that. It's set for 82 beats per minute. So you can hear that it's not all the same. Now I can show you what it would sound like if they were all the same. And I'm sure you can imagine, but we're trying to be as involved as possible here. So with this set, with all of them at 100, you're going to get very steady. So we're going to drop those back down to 50. In fact, there wasn't a lot of variance. So I'm going to go in here to our controls for this particular tambourine instrument. And I'm going to change the velocity in here. It's currently set at 45%. So it's saying that, like, for the most part, it's going to stay at a consistent range, but it's going to give 45% effort to maximize every time that I hit the key. So that's about half strength for one standardized press of a key. I'm going to make this 100 so that it's just full on. If I say it's full, it's full. If I say it's 50, it's 50, because otherwise it's doing math. And it would be like, if I have this set at 100, then it's 45% of 100. If I have it set at 50, then it's 45% of 50. So now these are a real 100 and these are a real 50 as far as the velocity is concerned. Now when I hit the start key, we should hear a more pronounced difference between the two. Alright. So that sounds okay now, but I'm sure once the kick drum and everything is on there, we're not really going to be able to hear that 50. So I'm going to change this up to about 70. Which is going to make it louder. I don't know if it's going to sound quite as varied, but alright, that'll work. So, because I hadn't fully thought this out, I'm going to add a closed hi-hat to this track over here, because that is sounding slow. Or it's like some Christmas in Hollis shit. Oh, shout out Run DMC. I'm not saying that in no negative way. I'm just saying I'm not making Christmas in Hollis right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get a closed hi-hat. I'm going to use the 808 hi-hat because I'm going to be sort of ridiculous. A lot of times I like to get something that sounds a little bit more natural for my hi-hats. My snares and my hi-hats, I like to have them sound like a real kit, at least to start, because it's raw and it's essentially the real thing. I like to manipulate the real thing. Now, that may sound contrary to what I was saying about computer music, but if computers found sounds, they got access to YouTube and all that stuff, and you might be like, well, you said an Apple IIe. Apple IIe wouldn't have been able to get access to YouTube, but it would have been able to use some super compressed version of real audio. I'm sure there was some means of it playing. It could handle a snare drum. So imagine, what would it do to a snare drum? What would a snare drum sound like on an Apple IIe? Because it would sound bit crushed or whatever. So don't argue with my methods. I'm just kidding. So we're going to go ahead and drop this 808 hi-hat here. Now, typically I would have these reversed around, but I'm not going to get into all of that because I've already got this sequenced out, and then it would alter it, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to set this for 16, though, because I want my hi-hats jamming. So I'm just going to draw this across, but it probably just did all of those defaulted to 70 velocity because that was the last velocity that I had set. So it'll carry over. If I'm putting some notes down, their velocity 47, then I change to a different one, I go to plug something in, it's still going to do it at velocity 47. So I'm just going to select these. I'm not going to go to a lot of trouble, so I'm going to press B, get back to my arrow. If I get all these bottom guys, I'm going to end up with some of the tambourine as well, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to have to, best way to do this, I'm just going to select everything, but then I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to re-drag across the bottom one. So now I've got nothing but these hi-hats here. Then I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the tambourines, where I'm going to select every other one, starting on the 2, 1, 1, 2, as it were. Second count of the first measure. Second count of the first bar, whatever. So then I'm going to Shark Tank. That's not what I want to do. So I'm going to select the first count, and then every other count. Sorry. This is all on the fly. Maybe next time it'll be scripted and we'll have sponsors and Kool-Aid and shit. So if I hold Control or Command, I'm going to drag this up to 100. Now I've got 100 velocity on my first, and then I've got 70 velocity on every other. Then it's sort of the same thing here, but then that's 1/8 versus 1/16. So I'm going to actually solo out my closed hi-hats right now. So if I play it, I'm not hearing all of that at the same time. I need to make sure my hi-hats sound okay. So I'm going to press stop. That's going to bring me back to the very first count. Then I press play. I can already hear it. I'm hearing like Rodney O and Joe or Sir Mix-a-Lot Posse on Broadway vibes. Every beat I make is based on Posse on Broadway. I'm just kidding. I was listening to a song of mine once though, and I was like, dude, you sound like you're trying to rap like Sir Mix-a-Lot. And I was like, that's kind of fucked up, but it's tight at the same time because I don't want to rap like anybody. But then if I gotta rap like Sir Mix-a-Lot, like you wouldn't expect me to be rapping like Sir Mix-a-Lot, or maybe you would. Maybe that's what people think. They're like, you know what, Megabusive just sounds like Sir Mix-a-Lot. In which case, shout out to Sir Mix-a-Lot. But let's go ahead and let's see. I don't want to make this more difficult than it has to be. All right, so if you double click on the track, if it's not currently visible, it'll bring up all your instruments and everything. I'm gonna unsolo this, see what it sounds like. All right, so in this particular aspect of the mix, the tambourine sounds too loud to me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna filter it first because it also sounds a little too crisp. So I'm going to drop my frequency filtering here, and then maybe kick the resonance up a little tiny bit so that it doesn't sound too dry, too hollow. I'm gonna loop this real quick to the amount that we have right here, just this 2 bars. If I click on this, because it's all one place, if I press Command L, that's gonna give me the loop. So now I've got a 2-bar loop, and that's fun and exciting. And now we're gonna put in the kick drum. So that's not what I had in mind. I just wanted to see what it would sound like. I'm just tapping the A key on my keyboard. So you know what? I like a very particular like drum scenario. So this is something maybe we could talk about. Is, you know, for a long time I felt as though I needed to adhere to what I thought other people believed you were supposed to do in particular situations regarding production, right? Like the sequence has to change all the time, and you got to use these kind of instruments, and you're not allowed to use this, and there's all this jazz and whatever. And I'm just like, that's all fine and good, but like, what if you don't? Like, what if you don't want to? What if you don't want to do any of those things, and you just want to throw it all at the wall and see what sticks? But you know, people then start like making comments or pigeonholing you or whatever, and you feel like you're not even doing what you want to do at that point. You're doing some shit based on some bullshit construct that fools just be saying because they should be doing more work instead of talking so fucking much. But you know, like, everything don't gotta be different. Like, you listen to other types of music, these motherfuckers, like, every song sounds exactly the same. Like, if you listen to other styles of music, like, I'm not gonna like say any styles of music in particular, and people be like, "Oh, this motherfuckers that all them songs sound the same." But I'm just saying, like, certain songs have a certain styles of music have a certain specificity to them. That's what defines that style of music. Like, it could be a particular maraca pattern, or it could be a horn variation, or like, you know, the blues is based on like a very small number of chords. Like, that's it. And it's like, okay, well, what if you wanted to make a blues song but it wasn't that? Like, could you? Is it possible? Like, that's how I would think about it. I'd be like, well, then I'm gonna make a blues song that doesn't do that, and you can't tell me it's not that because I'm telling you what it is, like, already. Like, it's a blues song, but I'm not doing it like that. So maybe I don't understand enough about how that works, and I'm missing something somehow. But that's how I would approach it. Certainly. And in fact, now I feel like I have to do that. Maybe our next video, I'm going to make a blues song that doesn't adhere to the blues construct. Just because. Maybe that's how blues became jazz. You know, maybe that's the difference. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a number of other variations of music in between, but the general idea is there. So anyway, enough talking. I think I had enough talking. We've got this kick drum. Oh, that's the point I was going to get to. Sorry, I lost track. I like kick drums that sound like have a certain pattern to them. Like it's not the exact pattern every time, but I want some like bum 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 bum, like something that's just like punchy and it keeps driving and it's moving. I'm not really into like the boom 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 boom. Like I am. If somebody else gives me a beat like that and it sounds tight, the sounds are on point and all of that, I'm all over it. And I really appreciate it because I won't typically do something like that. So I'm not talking shit. I'm just saying, for myself personally, like I know what typically makes me feel like I sound better at what I'm doing. And anytime I'm making a beat, it's for somebody to rap over. I don't make beats to just be sitting up having accompaniment. Like, what I need that for? It's just for people to rap. That's why they don't get all super crazy. I don't make them all full usually and whatever, because it's supposed to be about the rhymer. Other people be making beats and they just be focused on the beat, talking about the producer. And it's like, then just go listen to the producer. Like, don't worry about the raps. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I love the beat. I don't really like the raps. And it's like, well, then maybe you just don't like rap music. And people, you know, got all different types of interests. So I digress. I'm going to put in my punchy drum sequence because that's just what I do. So another Control Shift M to set up a new MIDI track on, or, you know, MIDI clip. Clips is what they're called on here. So I'm going to press B, turn this back into my little pencil tool, and I know that the kick is typically going to be on the 1, the snare is going to be on the 2 if you're doing everything based on the actual tempo. Now, a lot of times people double up the tempo so that they can do things like on 16ths and 30 seconds because they don't realize that there's a functionality for that, and you just got to know how to use it instead of doubling up your tempo because you're being untrue. You can't do it at 190 beats per minute when it's really 80 or 95 beats per minute. Like, it's just, that's just not how it works. I mean, you could say it is, but then whatever else you're doing on top of it isn't lining up that way either. So your verses aren't going to be at that tempo because that tempo 180 whatever should be crazy fast. So it's just, anyway, I say all of that to say it should be on the 1 and the 2 at least for the kick and the snare if you're doing everything based on a regular tempo. So something that I'll actually usually do that gives me more kind of flexibility is I'll actually lay my snares first. So they're by themselves, and then when I program my kick around it, I already know what my drums are going to start sounding like. Because if I do the kick by itself, then I have to imagine where that snare hit is going to be, and that doesn't always work for my purposes. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug this snare in on the 2 and the 4, because that's where it goes pretty much every time. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and we're going to hear our percussion and the snare playing together. We're finally getting somewhere. I may or may not talk less. I don't know. I haven't decided. So we're going to go ahead and get into this kick drum scenario. My kick drum is sounding very, very low right now. So it's only coming in at 5.6. So we're going to need to add another 3.6 to that. 3.6 from 10.9 is going to be 7.3. I don't know. I can't always do the maths. We'll see what it does though. And I was right. So now we need to get this snare up. The snare's coming in at 5.6. So that means we need another 3.76, which is going to put us at 6.7. I don't know. Let's find out. So I was a little bit off. We're going to do -7. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hella loud. And let's drop it a little bit more. -7.2. should get us at least a little bit closer. Alright, so we're working in the negative 2.03 and negative 2.06 range, which isn't bad. But this is where I'm going to start getting into my early phase mixing. I try to mix throughout because I want to know what it's going to sound like at the end. I don't want to throw a bunch of stuff together and then go to mix it and I'm just battling sounds, just competing frequencies and all this other madness. I can't deal with all that. And something else, well, no, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and get into that because it's already 8:53. This has been almost an hour long already. I don't know if you guys are having any fun. Yo, what up, my man Floyd? What's up, Serge? What's up, Ethan? Thank you guys for joining me. I didn't know that I had access to the chat. I'm going to say what's up to everybody. Peace, peace. Can I like all this stuff? What up, Cuddy? Well, this is cool. I get to see the homies. I didn't even realize this was going on. I'm just so involved over here in my madness. Ah, phone going off now. I didn't even realize I had the audio or the volume up. I thought I had my volume down. Turn this off. I don't need any more interruptions. I don't know what goes on in the world anymore. And I shouldn't be looking at my phone at all. I'm very sorry for that. That was just some dead ass air right now while I was trying to turn off some shit. Alright, no more of that fuck shit. Let's get into this mix. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to compress every single instrument in this mix. Now, if we've got any, you know, audio file engineer types out there and like, oh my god, compression, why are you doing the compression so early? I don't know what the fools be talking about. Maybe nobody would say anything. It might be, hey, that's smart thinking right there. So I'm gonna go to my plugins. I do have some Waves plugins installed. I have paid for these. You can actually buy them in very small bundles on their website, and sometimes they'll have some really good deals, so I'll just wait until I get things for a good price. I've been using the same Waves plugins for the last like more than 20 years, so I already knew which ones I needed. I don't use very many. I don't really use a whole lot of stuff. I try to keep it very simple and very effective. So I like to use the C1 compressor gate stereo. Now, I never use the gate function. The gate function is to cut out any area that's not being used by the sound. I use that for vocals. Like anytime you've got like a breath or any kind of imperfection that's not at the same level as the rest of your vocals, then you want to throw a gate on it. It's going to cut out everything that's below a set range. So you'll only hear the things that you want to hear. It works to varied degrees. A lot of times I'm just going to go in there and literally delete the breaths or whatever. Like, I don't want to hear that shit. It's music. I'm doing my takes all the way through one shot, like no punch-ins, so motherfuckers can accept the fact that I take out my S's and all that kind of stuff, because it just sounds better. It sounds more professional. I don't want to hear a motherfucker breathing on the mic. But I have thought the one person that can get away with that shit is Method Man. I was like, Method Man will have the whole in the verse, and you're like, that's fire. So shout out to Method Man. So anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and throw the compression on these bad boys. Let me see something real quick. I gotta know. Oh, you guys can't even see my compression. Uh-oh. Well, that's not helpful. All right, well, I'm using the C1 compression gate from Waves. So right now, when I play the beat, I've currently got compression on my kit. It's showing me in the compressor that it's coming in at negative 3.5, which is fine. I'm not going to change it. On the mixer, it's coming in at 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my threshold for a negative 5.5. And I only ever want to take 2 decibels off. When I'm doing instruments and things, it's mostly a cosmetic adjustment. And then I'm going to change my ratio to 2. So for every 1 decibel it's going to reduce it by 1 decibel in the mix as well. So right now, everything is coming in at -2 because -5.5 minus or plus -3.5 gives me -2. So the ratio is 2, which then drops it down to 2 in the output, or -2 as it were. So it's like the same volume, but now you're hearing that it's not as blatant, which means that I have a lot more flexibility to move it around in the mix as far as the overall loudness of it goes. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the snare. And you could copy and paste it over. Sometimes I do, but you know what? In this instance, I'm just going to do that because it'll show it as an example. So I'm just going to click on the compressor on this track. I'm going to hold Alt, which is going to allow me to duplicate it, and I'm just going to carry it over to the snare. Now let's see what it gives me for the snare. The snare is coming in at -2.4 into the compression. So I'm going to change the threshold to -4.4 from the -5.5 so that I'm back to a 2. And it's coming out at -2.4, the same as it's going in. So I'm actually going to pump my makeup to 0.4 just to get an even 2 decibels out of it. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the kick. I should have done that before. So on the kick, it's coming in at -2.1. And I'm going to pump this up now just by 0.1. And that should get us to 2.0. Or -2, as it were. Cool. Alright. So now we've got everything compressed. But if you hear, well, not if you hear, you can hear that the snare it sounds more forceful than the kick. Even though the velocity or the decibel volume on them is the same, it just sounds louder. So what we're going to do, I'm going to add some limiters. And the limiter, what that does is it will pull up the sound. It's going to take out a lot of the unnecessary frequencies and things, stuff you can't even hear, and it's going to bring up the sounds that you can hear. So I'm just going to search right here. We're going to go to L1 limiter stereo. We're going to do this on both the kick and the snare. So right now it's set at 0, 0. We're going to drop the threshold on it to -4, which is going to give us another bump of 2 based on the ratio. But the out ceiling is set for 0. And we're going to change that actually to -2. So that should bring us a volume of our kick to -2, a solid -2. And now we're going to do the same thing. In fact, we're just going to copy this limiter over to the snare because everything is pretty much, the dynamic range is the same. And there we go. So now is when we're going to start balancing out our sounds. This percussion is a little different. So I'm going to go to the percussion here. I want to add a little bit of attack to the hi-hat. It's a little too crispy for me. So a little bit of attack just kind of softens the beginning of that hi-hat. I think I'm going to pitch it down a little bit too. It sounds a little too happy for me. And then we're going to take the frequency down a little bit on the filter. Alright, this is starting to go somewhere. So I'm going to close, you can't even see my plugin windows, but I'm going to close my plugin windows for now. I'm just going to start working on the beat. I think we're in a good place. My main volume is not crazy. Well, actually, no. I do have a couple adjustments I need to make. So I'm going to take the snare down a couple decibels to bring it kind of even for my ear with the kick. That might be a little too much. Let's try -3 decibels. I think that sounds better. And that's bringing us in still under 0. We're not peaking out because we're still going to do some more adjustments over here with the compressor and the maximizer actually. So why don't I just go ahead and do that now. We're going to pull that C1 compressor back up. In my head I say C1 comp, so I keep thinking that, I should correct myself. C1 compressor. C1 compressor gate, we're going to put that over here Our audio for everything is peaking, not peaking, but the peak volume for all of it is negative 3.6 decibels in the master track. So I'm going to drop the threshold to negative 5.5 because I don't like the number 6, as I mentioned earlier. And now it looks like for our master decibels, we're at about 2. Ooh, no, it went to 1.2. That's okay. It's not peaking. I used to want to keep everything at that negative 2, but I'm like, you know what? As long as it's not at 0 or over 0, then it's good. So now we're going to go ahead and add, not the limiter, we're going to add an L1 Plus Ultra Maximizer, which is just a really pumped up limiter. And it's a mastering tool. A lot of people use, I use it in my mastering. It's just to bring the volume of everything up, and it just kind of adds some nice dynamics to the frequencies. So right now it's coming in at negative 1.2. Usually I wouldn't want to go more than 2 decibels as far as my threshold goes. There's a difference between the threshold and the output because things start to clip. But I have learned that sometimes I want my music to just be louder. And as long as it's not peaking all crazy, then, you know, you just have to take some chances in life. So I'm actually going to drop the threshold on this to, we'll start at negative 3, which is just over a difference of 2 between them. And that sounds pretty good, I think. So, alright, we're going to go ahead and close that. You can't see it, but I'm closing my plugin windows again. So you can see that the snare is only coming in at negative 5, and the kick should be coming in at negative 2, or minus 2, whatever. So, but I like the way that it sounds right now, and I know that I'm still going to be putting that other snare in there at some point, so we're just going to keep it like that for now. So now we're going to go ahead and program the kick. I probably just took like 30 minutes to do something very simple, but that's just the kind of guy I am. So now we're going to do this kind of driving beat. If I were to do it like on the 3, then it's going to give me like bop bop, and that's going to be very steady. I don't want that. I want to have something a little looser, so it's going to be like bop, and that still sounds a little too loose, and I don't like that there. It's just, alright, now we're getting somewhere into menacing territory. And I'm just fumbling around right now. I wouldn't typically do it this way, like I have particular rhythms that I like, but we're going to try to do something that sounds a little different. I've had people tell me, and this is just, I don't know that I believe it, but I've had people tell me that I've created drum patterns that they never heard before. And I was like, how is that possible? There's only so many numeric values that you can apply to this particular thing, and I'm doing everything very syncopated, so my options are even more limited than a lot of other people's, but I don't know. I don't like doing anything that's in a typical fashion, so maybe that has something to do with it. This kind of adds to it. So this is feeling like it. I'm going to shut up for a second and focus on this kick drum because it's a little too laid back. There's something I need to do. So let's see. All right, so I am gonna put one there. That gives it a little bit more urgency. It is a slower tempo. If I'm working in faster tempos, I don't like to clutter up the drums because there's just a lot going on. So in this particular instance, 82 is a little slow. We can put that guy there. I am gonna lower the velocity on it though, so it's not as pronounced as the one before it. Now, you know what? We're gonna move it up, give it some bounce. Alright, so we're going to turn the velocity back up because it's still saying the range that we had it before. We're not going to put it all the way up. Give it a little bit of like in and out sort of breathing. And 50 is way too low, so we're gonna push this up to 70. And 50 is too low, so some of these velocities. I think this rhythm is going to work, otherwise I'll be here all night. That's why I never get any music done, because I'm always tinkering. What's up, Pee-wee? What are you all worked up about, homie? Pee-wee wants to say what's up. Pee-wee like, yo, what about me? What about Pee-wee? Can I get on the mic, fam? Can I break? Can I break dance? Can I show them my moves? I'm working on Flare, Continuation, Halo 1990. I got this. You know I got it. You see me working. He has been working, but Pee-wee's day will come for him to shine. In the meantime, so this is sounding really laid back to me. I don't know. I can't, I gotta be real hectic with it most of the time, or at least I'm trying to. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna add some delay to my kick drum on a 16th note, and that's gonna kind of emulate that idea of the ghost notes. Now, if you got the delay volume turned up too high, you're just gonna sound like madness. But I'm gonna ease into it. Now, I could perform this same function, and a lot of times I will. I could just go in here to my kick drum, into the sequencing, change this to 32 or 30-second notes. Then I could pump in those little notes here in these smaller crevical areas. I prefer not to do that. I like the way the delay sounds, and then I can adjust the velocity of those ghost notes just using the control of the delay volume, or the send amount, as it were. So let's go ahead and get that going again, and then I'm going to just use this delay. But I need to change the settings of the delay here. Right now it's set on a third, so it's got like this bounce note. It's a 3/4 note, so it's like 3 notes per measure, like instead of you would get on a 4. I mean, I like that in some instances, but for right now it just feels like it was kind of adding to the slowness. But I'm going to do it on the 1 and 2. We're just going to make them real fast, like 16th note and 8th note essentially. And I'm using a pan delay, so it gives me options. Now I could sync the two and just have it set on one thing, and a lot of times I'll do that. But you can hear it there now. Now we're getting funky. That's what I like to hear. Okay. Now we're working with something. So now we're gonna go ahead. Wait, did this shit just end? Am I still broadcasting? Is anything even happening? I don't know if it's working or not. I don't know. Well, yeah, it has to be working because I saw the numbers were changing. Yeah, there we go. All right. So series of oscillators. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I've got it right here, native instruments, massive. So I'm just going to drag and drop that. It's going to create a new track, and that opens up my parameter window. So Massive is awesome. Massive starts with one single oscillator that's turned on. It's typically going to be a square saw wave, and what that means is based on this wavetable position, if I go to the left, it's going to be more like a square. If I go more to the right, it's going to be like a saw. Now, I'm not going to get into all the intricacies of how oscillators and frequencies and all that kind of thing work, but I will give you some examples. So if I hold down the key, and that's sort of what I was talking about by having my middle C, or my C1 set as my root key. When I start out, my sounds are typically very low because I want them that way usually. So if I hold the key down, but then I change the wavetable position, you'll hear a change in the sound going from the square wave on one side to the saw wave on the other side. And then in the middle, it's a combination of both. And then the intensity will kind of take some of that buzzy edge off. Right now it's set all the way up so you can hear a lot of that buzzy edge, but then when I turn it down, it'll start to soften the sound. Now, if you don't really gig with the the oscillators and that sort of thing. I spend a lot of time with oscillators because I love just using synthesizers. But the general idea is, like, you can hear, if you're not familiar, where people will get a lot of these, growly sounds. I'm going to go into some other styles of effects and whatever real quick on this just one bass instrument. And I think that's all I'm going to put on here. No, you know what? I'm going to add, how am I going to do this? Now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something silly. I'm going to go grab my Arturia Analog Lab that came with the keyboard that I mentioned earlier. A cool thing about this is if I go into the collection here, there's a number of sounds and things. I'm going to find stand-up bass, or upright bass, it's called. So upright. All right, this has more. I don't want any delay, no reverb. Ooh, that's funky. All right, we're about to get real fucking funky in here. I don't know shit about shit when it comes to writing music, but I like to think that I can hear a nice melody or something come together. So I'm just going to tinker around for a second. I'm going to go ahead and create a new MIDI clip here. That's Shift Command M for the new MIDI clip. And let me find a range I want to be in. It's giving me like Know the Ledge vibes. So I'm going to turn this down, the pitch, but then I'm going to use some of these higher keys. So, alright, that's it. That's easy enough for me. I'm not trying to get all super tech with it. So what I'm actually going to do, because that's going to be more in the range of maybe like a 4-bar loop, I'm going to select all, do it by Command A. Then I'm going to use Command D to duplicate that. So now I've got the same thing doubled up. Command A again, and then Command L to loop. Now when I play it out, I should have enough time. Otherwise, if you've got it set for loop and you're playing something out live and it's longer than the sequence you've got looped, it wraps it around and you still keep your original thing that you played, but then you don't have the accompaniment to go with it. So what I'll typically do is you know, make sure that I'm doing it with enough time. Now, I don't always do it, and that's why I've learned that I should probably do that up front, because I don't want to have to go in and then figure it all out again. So in fact, excuse me, I'm going to do this again. Now I've got 8 bars on a loop. I think I'm only going to be playing max 4 bars. So I'm going to go ahead and arm record. This is a click or a metronome, and you can set it to play all the time, or in this particular case, I just need it to count me in for 1 bar, and then that's it. So right now, because I can't just jump right in and start playing. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start the record, and then I should hear my metronome, and then I'll get started. And that should, there it is. So these are the notes that I recorded. You can see it wasn't horrible as far as being on beat. I could even leave it like that if I wanted to. That's what we're talking about as far as things being unsyncopated. I could leave it like that, and then I could just kind of move things around if I wanted them to sound one way or another. Let's see what that sounds like by itself. I'm gonna cut the rest of this stuff off because it looks like we did only need a 2-bar loop, because it was the same thing, just repeating very quickly. Now I'm just gonna loop this again by selecting this and then Command L, loop. Alright, that sounds ass. So I'm going to do, this is the easy way to quantize. If you're in the step sequencer view, I just did Command A, which is select all. Then I'm going to press Command U, and that just quantized everything for me to the 16th note, closest 16th note. Now, if it's too far back, it may end up sending it to the wrong position, or it may, if it's too early, it may send it to the wrong position in the other direction. I wasn't fully paying attention. I feel like some things may not have fallen where, well, no, I think it probably should be correct because it wasn't that far off in the first place. So let's just go ahead and play it. All right, that sounds pretty good to me. Now, because of all the shit I've been talking today, I'm going to go ahead. A couple of these sound like they could be moved a slight bit. Plus, I don't want anything to be played too short or too long. As it is right now, I want them all played back to back. And then we're going to make some adjustments based on the individual steps or notes. So I think that the second note is just coming in a little sooner. Like, it does sound a little robotic, extra robotic. So I want to give that some room to live after the fact. So it doesn't sound as rushed here, but this guy here does sound a little rushed to me, so I'm just going to move it a slight bit. Look who came to visit. Say hi to everybody, Pee-wee. It's Pee-wee. I want to show everybody my hot moves. I know you do, buddy. I know you do. Your video's going to come next week. But anyway, I think that sounds pretty good. But something about that, it sounds very low and very hollow. So I'm going to see what options I have in the keyboard program itself to see if I can jazz that up a little. Because I don't know, something about that isn't doing it for me. Let's see what the volume is here. Master volume is, or you know what? I think maybe I've got everything pitched down further than I want it to be. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select all. I'm gonna drag this up so I can see more of my workspace. So I'm actually gonna drag all this stuff up an octave because I feel like maybe I'm just in too low of a range. What have we got? What have we got? Yeah, I was hoping to be able to use the guitar amp plugins because those are what I like to use. But they're not available in Ableton Live Lite. And this other stuff is looking kind of funky. Well, you know what? We could throw some reverb on it with the phaser flanger. Maybe put the reverb before the phaser flanger. So we need some low end in there. There's like no low end in here. So I'm going to use a Q10 EQ plugin from Waves because that is the one that I bought. I don't have any other fancy reason for having done that. I used to like the HEQ in Ableton from Waves, the HEQ, but I think this one was just part of the pack that I bought and it works out okay. I just need to add some low end. I'm not going to add from the Supreme end because that's just inaudible low end, a lot of it, and it'll tweak your frequencies and have everything sound kind of blown out. So let's go ahead and push the stuff up in this range. And then we're getting that real fullness. We're not pumping everything out and blowing it out. In fact, we're going to turn this end maybe down a little bit so that it's going to buy us a little bit of extra room up top. So the reverb is sounding a little too high. I like to have my reverb real low. I don't want any spin. I don't want no foolishness or fuckery in my reverb. Okay. gonna add. Now, you know what? That shit sounds goofy. It sounds too happy. I'm not fucking with it. When I was moving through here, I heard another little thing that I liked, and it was more in line with what I wanted to do. So. I think I was trying to be fancy and show off. Like, ooh, look at me. I can play a melody. Fuck that. I don't want any fucking melody. I want fucking grime and dirt. Alright, I need to stay out of them high ranges. Alright, let's try that. And then I don't even know what I'm doing. Alright. Alright, make sure that this is here. Select all. And we're going to quantize. And what do we got? I think we can all agree that sounds more like something I would do. Very basic, very simple, but effective. I like the way it sounds. It sounds menacing. It sounds melancholy. It sounds like we're not having a good time, but that's what makes it a good time, because we're going to turn something that doesn't sound like it's a good time into a good time. And that's the alchemy that I'll be working with. You see what I'm saying? I like to do things to contradict. Like, contradiction is a huge theme in everything that I do, because everybody's always trying to say there's one way to do everything, and fuck that. There's 1.5 million ways to do everything, or you can do one thing the same way every time, which is okay too. Like, whatever you want to do, just fucking do it. So that's where we're at. We're macabre and menacing, and then we say a bunch of weird shit that sometimes makes sense or doesn't make sense, but in my mind it all makes sense because I have a reason for saying everything that I say. Just watch your fucking mouth. Anyway, we've been doing this for almost 2 hours now. This is insane. I'm gonna go ahead and add this last little piece of whatever, because this is this could go on forever. So now I'm gonna actually take my massive instrument that I created earlier, or we didn't even really create one, we started talking about it. So I'm gonna move this into one of these other types of oscillators. Wrong instrument, gotta make sure that I arm this, and I'm gonna move this over because now this is gonna be a secondary sound. I would always consider my bass my first primary audio sound outside of the drums or percussion, whatever. So I'm gonna rename this as bass. Then I usually will call this like synth 1 or something. And we're just gonna say synth lead because we're only gonna do this one. Now I'm gonna pitch this up actually, because I like to have something in the low end, something in the mid, and something in the high, at least, at minimum. Like, there should be something that's in those ranges. Now, sometimes you're going to have stuff that works in a low and mid, or a mid and a high. You're not typically going to have stuff that work in a low and a high. So you can blend everything together. You know what I mean? You can figure it out. But in this particular instance, we're going to go with something in the higher frequencies. So we got that armed. Ooh, that's not. So we're going to pitch this up. And then I just want to find a filter sound, or not a filter sound, an oscillator sound that's going to sound good for us. Let's use that. So the envelope for a massive is the primary. You guys can't see any of this, I'm forgetting. So maybe next time I'll figure out how to show all these things. And I'm gonna What you doing, Pee Wee? Pee Wee just sitting here chilling. My best guy right here. Say what's up, Pee Wee. It's me. It's Pee Wee. I'm dancing. I'm chilling. He having a good time. He always having a good time. The Pee Wee. All right. That sounds. All right. You know what? Just to kind of emphasize a few points here, we're gonna use that sound in its current state, but we're going to make some adjustments to it to make it more palatable for what I would like to do. So I'm going to change the voicing on here to change this to mono, so the sounds don't play over each other. I'm going to start moving faster and talking faster too, because I don't want to be doing this all night, just like nobody wants to be sitting here watching this all night. So now I'm going to add my typical LFO, because I'm hella basic. I love my LFO. I'm going to change the settings on this LFO. We're going to do it at eighth notes for now. That's a Megabusive beat. That's it. I won the game. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to record. I'm going to lay that little part down. I'm going to make some adjustments, and we're going to rock with this the way that it is. And then the next time we do a video, we'll work on some other things. Thank you for the folks that came to check it out. Oh, more cat content? We got all the cat content. Cat content for days. Little Pee Wee in the mix. But Pee Wee says no more. I've had enough. I'm out of here. I need to go practice my moves. So he out practicing his moves. But yeah, let's go ahead and lay this sound down, and then we'll be done with that. So thank you again to everybody for showing up. I'm gonna do this. I might do a little freestyle for fun, because y'all haven't heard me freestyle in a long time, and I got this new crazy ass freestyle style that's blowing minds all over the galaxy. Yeah, let me take a refreshment break. I've been talking for like an hour and a half straight. I am a maniac. I haven't used the bathroom. I haven't done anything. All right. So I'm gonna lay that sound down, but then I'm gonna do some modulation to that, and that'll be fun. All right, so there's the little synth lead things that I popped in. I'm going to quantize those because they don't need to be off. And I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to select all, duplicate everything across a lot of bars. Then I'm going to select all. Then I'm going to loop. Then I'm going to zoom out so we can see everything. So this is now a 64 bar loop, a little over 3 minutes, and this is how I typically like to do my arrangements and stuff, depending on what the project is. If it's a multi-verse project, like if I'm going to lay a number of verses, or if I've got like a posse cut going or something, I like to do it like this so I can see everything at once, and then I just start dropping things in and out where I best see fit. Plus it's easier to copy and paste this way. If I was trying to do everything piece by piece and then only move the stuff that I needed when I needed it, it would, I don't know, that would kind of screw things up for me a little bit. So to do the edits in here, I can just select an entire portion. So this is like a whole 2-bar portion. I know that I'm going to want at least 2 bars where I just got one sound. In this particular instance, I only want the bass to play. So since I have everything selected, if I press Command and then click that, it deselected it. So if I delete everything, it's going to delete everything but that. So now I know I'm going to have just my upright bass in that 2-bar space, and we'll see what that sounds like. Now, I don't want everything to come in right here, so I'm going to go ahead and select everything again. I know I'm going to want my upright bass. In this particular instance, I'm only going to want my tambourine. So I'm going to make a few adjustments here. Oops. Nope. So I'm going to want to select all these, except for that. Delete those, but then I'm going to double click on this so I can come in here and then make some adjustments. I only want the tambourine playing for this particular 2 bars, so I'm going to select these 2 bars. Then I'm going to deselect. Oh wait, you know what? I don't. Oh yeah. So I'm going to select everything, then I'm going to deselect my tambourines, then I'm going to hit delete. Now all I've got is my tambourines. I'm going to go ahead and play it. So depending on what I'll be doing from this point, there's a number of options as to how I would proceed at bar 5 or prior to bar 5. In this particular instance, I am going to copy this little synth note so that right before bar 5, which is where I intend to start bringing in the, or where I'm going to bring in the drums for this particular exercise, then I'll have that little beep, 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 beep right at the end of that, give it a little bit of variation to what was happening, and then other things will come in. So for this, we're just going to drop all the drums at the same time, but I'm going to take out that synth lead, but I am going to have it play at the end of the first 4 bars, but then I'm going to let it play for the next 4 bars. Then I'm going to take both of the samples out for 4 bars. We're just going to have drums. I'm going to copy this tambourine line from here, and I'm going to plug it in over here. So when we have just the drums playing at the beginning, it's going to be just the tambourine and the drums, and then it's going to be the rest of the percussion. So with all of these adjustments, we have this. And that's that. So I would now, even though I wastefully duplicated all of that, I'm going to delete everything up to where I want everything to start looping again. So because I don't have any of the little synth sound playing at the beginning, I think that's a decent place for it to loop, and it'll give it some variance, at least for now. So I'm going to delete all of this. Then I'm going to duplicate everything from the beginning of the 5th bar. So we've got 20 bars selected here. That's going to give me a room for a 16 and then 4 bars. Now I may determine that I want to do something else with those 4 bars. I may extend it to 8 bars for a hook or something. I don't know. For right now, we're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to duplicate this whole entire 20 bars. And now we've got a sequence. It's not very vast or broad. I didn't do a lot of change-ups. You know, you can do stuff like drop a few kicks in and out here and there to give it some dynamics, and then you can, you know, end a bar where there's no kick and snare or no kick and hi-hat, so it's like, you know, add some drama. But yeah, I think that's cool. Let's go ahead and just randomly take things out here and there. There's no real rhyme or reason to this, what I'm doing right now, just to kind of make it spicy. and then we'll see what it sounds like, and if we want to make any changes, we can. Let's see. All right, so let's see what we got. Have it, ladies and gentlemen. How to make a beat in Ableton Live using nothing but stock sounds, except they weren't stock sounds, and I'm sorry, I just lied to you. But that was a very simplified version of making a beat. Now, I did allude to, I didn't even allude, I said I was going to kick a freestyle with this new style that I developed, and I'm not sure that it would be wise of me to show this new style off, because then it will give people an opportunity to see it and then try to adopt it for themselves. And I don't know that that's something I want to allow. But you know what? It's a modern age we're living in. It's 2025. All the rules have been thrown out the window. So fuck it. Here we go. Check it out. Don't be surprised when you hear everybody rhyming like this after this. Not everybody, you know. Shout out to the homies. Shout out to all my homies out there that really be doing it. But for some of the other imposter style cats that be seeing how a motherfucker be innovating and then be like, oh, I want to do that too. Like it's just up for grabs. And they sound stupid when they try to do it. So it's fine. But anyway, here it is. Brand new freestyle style for 2025. Y'all gonna bug. Y'all be like, oh man, this guy, he crazy. All right, here we go. Let me make sure I got no clicking going. Yo. Yeah. Cold bussin'. I was sitting at the bus stop wearing a pork chop around my neck. Don't ever disrespect on the disconnect. You can get your neck protected by listening to Jizza or listening to Master Killer or Jay Dilla. None of that makes sense. I'm out here for the thriller. Cold steady bustin' on the microphone. MCs be like E.T. calling me at home, and I don't be answering. Ain't spending no spaceships. You ain't escaping from the planet on which you're living in. Yeah, this is so good style. So good style, so hood style. So good style that'll make you smile. You'll go tell your parents that everything tires. I want to talk about putting out and preventing forest fires. I want to talk about putting up flyers if you're trying to find a missing relative. Everything is relative. MCs rhyme too much, it's sedative. In fact, I don't even be listening. I be on my own missions, and when I'm done, I'll be through. MCs ain't bustin', the shit ain't cool. I do it so good. Yeah, that's word to Hollywood, and I'm out. Peace. Thanks for joining me. That was a really good, fun time. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening. Bye.